Well, hello again, and welcome back to Lifestyle Medicine. So, in this module, we're talking about sleep and stress. And so, I thought I'd cover a couple minutes for you on my take on this. Of course, you read the chapter and get the nuts and bolts, but this is a little bit about how I view sleep and stress. Very intertwined. Okay, sleep and stress are seem to go hand in hand together. And a lot of times I'm asked when I meet with folks doing in the cardiovascular and diabetes risk reduction program here at Creighton, they'll ask, okay, so you have all these things that would be great to do to improve my health and whatnot related to lifestyle. How would you rank them? And it's a great question. It's a hard question because it really is unique to each individual. So you can't say for sure which one is the first to work on, most important, next most important. But I generally do have three that I kind of say these are the things that are probably bubble to the top for most people. One is exercise, the other is sleep, and then the third would be water intake or hydration at proper amounts. And it's hard to say of those which is most important. Generally, it's either exercise or sleep. So this is sort of the segue into sleep. It is as I've said many times over to people, if you are not going to make a commitment to getting enough sleep, then you will probably not be successful at lifestyle behavior modifications. Because if we don't have enough sleep, we seem to undermine everything else that we want to do that's healthy. We just don't have enough energy, whether it's physical energy or emotional energy. There just isn't enough to be able to make good choices or to be able to have the motivation that you need to make those choices. And there are a couple of theories on this. One that I particularly like to, I guess, tell this story because it seems to make sense that we have an emotional, we all have emotional energy, okay? And think about your emotional energy as a tank that is a certain size. The size of your tank of emotional energy is unique to you. It's different than my size of tank for emotional energy. But regardless, when we wake up in the morning, our tank is generally full. If we've slept and didn't have, this, assuming that everything went well sleeping, okay? So that our tank is full of emotional energy. So we start off every day with high energy. And that emotional energy, when we have enough, it allows us to make better choices. And so most people tend to eat better through the first part of the day than they do the second part of the day. Part of the reason is because their emotional energy is adequate. As you go through the day, our emotional energy dwindles. And this actually goes down when we the more stress you have, the more energy it takes from your tank. And so we seem to like routine and habits, and because of those routines, it takes less emotional energy. So for instance, we usually drive the same route to work or to school every day. And because we do that, we know the way. It doesn't take a lot of extra thinking for us, an extra energy for us to get from home to school or work. That's just one example. But when we do take an alternate route, then we have to think more. It takes a little bit more energy. Those things throughout the day pull away from the emotional energy that's in your tank. A couple of things that you can do to get the level back up of emotional energy. One is to rest or sleep, and the other one is to exercise. That restores emotional energy. When we get to, so if you can play out the scenario in your own life, you go through a day, and it can be a normal day, can be an extra stressful day. Either way, your emotional energy dwindles in your tank. It drains out. And if you haven't restored that energy through something like a break during the day, some exercise, maybe a nap, then your tank continues to go down. What becomes difficult then when you don't have the emotional energy that you need is to make good choices for, say, like eating and exercising. And take eating, for instance. If you don't have a plan for what you're doing for eating at nighttime, or maybe you do have a plan, if your emotional energy is low, it is really tough to say, no, I don't want that candy bar, that ice cream, that high sugar food, that high processed starchy food that we probably shouldn't be eating in the latter part of the day. So the point is that when our emotional energy is low, it's hard for us to say no. It's hard for us to push away from the dinner table when we've had enough. But it seems to be easier during the day. It's easier to say no to that candy bar earlier in the day than it is later in the day. And the theory on this is that we don't have enough energy to have the motivation to have to say no. Same thing goes for exercise. If we hadn't made exercise a routine part of our time later in the day, generally we don't have the energy to say, yes, I need to get up off the couch and go take a walk. And that makes it really hard. But earlier in the day, it seems to be a little easier for most people to find the energy to go take a walk. So the point in all of this discussion is, one, it's that sleep and rest is important for lots of reasons that you're reading a textbook, but it's also important because it restores that emotional energy that we all need to make good choices, and not just for ourselves, but to have good positive relationships. We know that when we're rested, we have more positive relationships with other people, we're less edgy, and that directly then leads to less stress. Again, the second topic on here. So that the sleep and the stress definitely go hand in hand. But I always tell people a rate-limiting step of healthy lifestyle behaviors, or you can think of lifestyle medicine, is sleep. If you're not committed to getting enough sleep, you're probably not going to be as successful in your behavior, your healthy behavior changes and modifications that you'd like to make. So then getting into the stress part of it, and as a segue into that, there's a little mention in one of the fast facts in the book about evolutionary paradox. Fascinating, I think. This is about our improvements, our increases in technology that we've made really since World War II, but more so probably in the last 10 years, 20 years, in that we advance our technologies to the degree that we generally have a lot of things in mind that this is going to make life easier. I'm going to do this so it makes life easier. In fact, what we see happening is that it works in reverse, in that the more technology that we produce or develop, the more stressful life becomes. And you know, I mean, a great example is this thing that I carry on my hip and that you carry on yours or your pocket or your purse or whatever. The constant connection with an electronic device is a great example of how that produces more stress, more anxiety, because we just aren't disconnected like our bodies need to be. Our brains need to be disconnected from feeling like there's always something else that I need to be doing. And even if that is looking at Facebook or Instagram or emails or website, news, sports, whatever it is, that feeling of always needing to know or being connected. There's a great deal of research on that now to show that leads to a lot of stress that just wasn't there years ago. So it's something to be very cognizant about in our use of technology, our interaction with technology, in all forms, not just the device that you carry with you all the time. But how does that affect my life? How is that affecting the lives of the people that I'm working with in a coaching scenario? The other two other points that I'd kind of like to make about this is stress is about coping. We all have stress. Stress is largely a a personal perception. What makes me stress may not make you stress. What makes you stress may not make me stress. So it's very personal, and when you're in a coaching situation, you want to be very careful not to judge what other folks say is stressful to them. It may not be stressful to you. It doesn't matter. This isn't about you. It's about them. And if it makes them stressful, then you have to sit up and pay attention and work on that with them, because this is about their stress, and stress is perception. And especially if it's the inability to cope with chronic and long-term stress. The stressful, my drive to work was stressful. Those things we can deal with, those acute short-term stressors. It's the long-term chronic stress. That's what has the health issues related to it, and you can read that, of course, in the book. There's a couple of things, too, as far as coping with stress that I wanted to point out. In the book, talks about the relaxation response, and there's a lot of, and the reason I mention it is because there's so much science associated with the benefits of the relaxation response. But essentially, it's a meditation. And so meditation works in a lot of different ways. And the people who started the relaxation response will readily admit there's really no magic to how necessarily to what we're doing. It's just that they're calming the mind through the technique, and that can be done in lots of different ways. One of the ways it's very Ignatian to do is to use the examen. And I don't have it in the book, but it's certainly something that if you're unfamiliar with the examen, it's a technique that St. Ignatius used and taught his followers, and it was really a way to communicate with God and a reflection about the day and where God is interacting with you on a daily basis, and at what time points, and when and where and how, and just becoming aware of that. But what developed out of that was this real sense of stress reduction. So it can serve really two very important areas. One on your spiritual relationship, and the other as a stress reduction. And it ties in closely with this notion of gratitude, and there are some specific things written about gratitude and its effect on stress reduction, but they all kind of tie together, and I don't think that's by coincidence. I think that is how it works, in that if we calm ourselves, our bodies, our minds, with some reflection time, that is going to lead to all kinds of good things from that. So I'd encourage you to do a little searching if you're unfamiliar with the examen. It's E-X-A-M-E-N, examen. That you do a little bit of looking about that, and perhaps gratitude also. In the course that we have a specific course in the graduate program, the Health and Wellness Coaching graduate program, that is specifically titled Sleep and Stress, or I gotta think of the exact name. Sleep or stress management and stress and sleep management. There we go. But we cover a whole module just on gratitude and stress reducing techniques, which include the examen, and we put in the relaxation response and some other pieces in there that tie in some spirituality. So we cover a lot in that area in this other class. But this is all we get in here, again, because it's on a different level. But if you're interested, I would encourage you to do a little bit of looking on what that means. So there you have it. If you have any questions, let me know. I always enjoy reading your discussion posts. They're absolutely going wonderful. I'm behind the scenes reading, following, and very much enjoying how you're interacting with each other, your depth of reflection, and the perspectives that each of you give to your classmates really is right on the mark for where we want to be. So congratulations to that, and keep up that throughout the rest of the class. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. Until next time, see you soon. Thanks.